You know, they always say that the most important thing in directing is casting. If you don't cast it right, you can't fix it. And it's the same thing. If I don't cast the VFX person or the costume designer or the composer, if I don't cast them properly, I can't fix that either.
What's up, everyone? Jake here, your indie VFX guy, and today I got to sit down with writer-director Howard Goldberg to talk about his film Double Exposure. We at VFX To Go had the immense pleasure of creating the visual effects for his last two films, and as an indie film director, I wanted to talk with him about how early planning and knowing when to pivot helped him balance his creative vision against budgetary constraints. But before we get into the interview, if you want to learn more about how you could save both time and money in post-production, hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, render me a like and let me know you want more interviews like this. With that, here's Howard Goldberg. Howard, so good to see you. How are you doing, man?
Good, thanks. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm doing all right. And congratulations on completing Double Exposure. I'm so excited that it's out there and it's getting a big London premiere. Isn't that right?
Yes, yeah. June 24th, we'll be premiering at the Rain Dance Festival, where we're also nominated for the Spirit of Rain Dance Award, which is kind of like their Palme d'Or.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about Double Exposure. You reached out to me some years before you even started shooting with the script, and I really appreciated that because you were in the script process and you were asking my feedback on visual effects and what you may be looking at. And I always tell everybody that is the time to get a visual effects professional involved in the filmmaking process. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey making this film?
Well, the journey was a long one. As you know, you did my last film with me, Jake Squared, and we had a great time doing that, and that all went very well. And then I started writing this script, which was going to take me a few months to write and wound up taking 25 drafts in 9 years. You read an early draft. We got together way in the beginning, had lunch and talked about it, and you had some suggestions that were great that actually made it into the script and to the concept. And the funny part is that later on, after we finally actually made the movie and you and I were talking about the special effects, and I told you that, you didn't even remember that you'd given me that idea, but you did.
I mean, I'll take credit for it, I'm sure.
That's right. That was your idea. It was a great one. It's a great touch, and it actually goes through the whole screenplay.
Oh, I'm glad to have been involved in even that capacity
Absolutely.
As well, too.
And so, yeah, no, it was a long process. And you were on the team right from the very beginning and right through to the end.
Well, it was my pleasure to be there. One of the things, like I said, I always encourage filmmakers, artists, producers to get somebody involved in visual effects as early as possible, like you did. How important is that to you to get other people that you intend on working with involved even in the script phase?
Very important. I spoke to lots of people. Well, first of all, in the end credits of the film is a list of the people who read the screenplay and gave me feedback and gave me notes, and it's 35 people. Wow. So obviously, I got a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and some of them, like yourself, you were visual effects. Another guy who was also, Stefan Fangmeyer, who was my good friend, he's also in visual effects. Cinematographers read it. All kinds of people, costume people read it, and I take that feedback, and sometimes it colors the screenplay, sometimes it doesn't. So yeah, no, that's very important. The more feedback you can get, the better, because it depends. If you're making a low budget film, then you have to be doing two things. Number one, being completely creatively free and write what it is you want to see. But then you have to also be producerial and think about what can actually be accomplished given the budget that you have. If you have a $25 million budget and you want to write a film that takes place on a battlefield in World War II with tanks, well, okay. But if you're making a film for $2 or $3 or $4 or $500,000, you better rethink that scene, because it's probably not going to happen unless it's, totally CGI, and that would cost a lot also. So anyway, yes, talking to whoever you can is going to help you formulate what it is you're creating.
How do you balance the creative vision with the budget constraints in the process?
For example, on this script, I wrote it as freely as I could, and I put in all kinds of stuff. And you saw those things, and we talked about those things. But in the process of making the film, I made tremendous alterations in my head. And, I always kept telling people, listen, it may be described like that in the screenplay, but I wrote the screenplay and I can change it if I want to. So if something that I wrote, which production people, which, my producers and script supervisors and everybody is taking completely literally. They're going, well, that's in the script. I'll say, well, you know what? It's not in the script anymore because I just changed it. So you have to have the ability to alter that which you have written and substitute something that's equally as effective and says the same thing and gets you to the same place, but might not cost as much. Because when I write it, I can be free and loose in my head and say whatever the heck it is I want to say. But I might have to make alterations later on to accommodate to what I actually can physically do on the budget, because my films are low budget films and I don't really have a lot. And we found a lot of workarounds. I still got exactly what I wanted. I wouldn't want the film to look any different than it does. But if I had $1 million more than what I had, maybe a lot of stuff would have looked a little different because we wouldn't have been having to make do. But that being said, you wouldn't know it seeing the film. The film looks exactly the way I would want it to look. But it takes a lot of finagling to make that happen. We made all kinds of changes and alterations on the fly, on the set. Many, many things were altered. Many things were altered in the editing process where we had to do certain things in a certain way and then we had to change them. And, you got to be flexible. You got to be flexible, but you got to also be true to your vision. In other words, I'm not going to cut something that I need in the film. I'm going to find a way of doing it. If it's too expensive to do one way, I'll find another way of doing it. And very often the end result is even better than what you thought it was going to be. For example, many of the visual effects that I had described in the screenplay, they would have been over the top. Because once the film is there on film and you have your actors and they're emoting and they're doing the things that they're doing, it turns out that some of the things that I described would have been too much icing on the cake. They wouldn't have helped the film. I had to pull them back. And not because I couldn't afford to do them the other way, but because to do them the other way would have taken away from the film, actually. So right now, the film has the right balance of visual effects and looks. And in fact, you and I did the one over the top sequence, but we couldn't do more than that. If we did, it wouldn't have looked right. That was the one that was okay because the other ones were pulled back a lot. If they'd all been at that level, then it would have been a completely different film, and I don't know that it would have worked as well.
Yeah, I do remember that the script in itself is this beautiful, fantastical story to an extent. And as we were developing it too, I know that we'd kind of play with an idea and realize, you know what, maybe this story doesn't require that to
That's
be
right.
to be
That's exactly right. They work great in the description of the screenplay, but the screenplay, well, one of the greatest quotes I ever heard was, I think it was Rob Reiner said it. He said, you make 3 movies. There's the one you write, there's the one you shoot, and there's the one you edit. But they all change as you move along through all different kinds of thousands of inputs and exigencies that require you to make all kinds of changes, whether they be intellectual, artistic, or financial.
When big studios, they do a ton of pre-production, obviously. They do a ton of they plan everything now as a T because they've got all this money, like tons of money, riding on a movie working, right? But with independent productions, it's funny. You have the exact opposite, yet the same problem is you don't have a lot of money, but a lot is riding on it. How do you look at the pre-production process in terms of the planning involved in getting a film off the ground?
Very rarely do I have a very, very specific idea that is almost inflexible as to how I'm going to shoot it. I don't really. A lot of people do. A lot of people storyboard out the whole damn movie before they even come close to making it. They know every shot that they're going to do. I don't happen to work that way. My tendency is to say to a person like yourself, as I said to you, this is what's written in the script. Do not take it literally. I want to hear what you think would look great, what you think that we can do on a low budget film that you think is going to be really cool, and get that point across. It does not have to be as I described it. That is what I gave you as a mission. And then we discussed it. And we ultimately shot the blue screen stuff of the actor the way that you thought that we should. And then you were free to give me some ideas. And then, we looked at some of your ideas together, and, it evolved. It's not exactly as I described it in the script, but that's what I told you to do. Don't do it exactly as it is in the script. But I don't know that everybody can do that, or everybody would want to do that. I think a lot of people probably come to you and say, hey, listen, Jake, this is what we need. We want it to be this, 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 and that. And that's what they want to see. They don't want to see anything different than that.
Very much so. I'd say you were the dream scenario to work with. You allow artists to be artists and you are flexible with what they have to contribute. How important do you think it is to allow your crew and your team to do what they do best? Very.
I feel that for me, as the director, as the person who wrote and is directing the film, that's exactly how I feel. I want people to be free to be as creative as they possibly can, and I get veto power.
Yeah, you can always say no.
That's really great. I love what you did, but I don't think it works. It's not right for the scene. Let's try something different. I don't often do that, though. I do the same exact thing with the composer, with the costume designers. They come to me with whatever crazy idea comes into their heads, and I will tell them whether or not, I'll be perfectly honest, whether I think, I'll never say it's not good, because it's always good, but it might not be appropriate. They always say that the most important thing in directing is casting. If you don't cast it right, you can't fix it. And it's the same thing. If I don't cast the VFX person or the costume designer or the composer, if I don't cast them properly, I can't fix that either. So the very fact that we're working together means that I already established that relationship with you, or with the costume designer, or the set designer, or the composer. I'm already on the same wavelength with them. So in all likelihood, they're going to bring me something that appeals to me. And I'll make adjustments. I'm free to make adjustments because I get to say what goes and doesn't go. I'm the boss. The buck stops with me. But, same thing. You brought me lots of different plates, and we talked about them, and we made adjustments. We did them right like this on Zoom a couple of times, where we had Zoom sessions, and we brought something up, brought it down, changed this a little bit, and there you go.
So where can people see Double Exposure? Has it reached any distribution deals yet?
No, we're close to finalizing a distribution deal, but right now it's the festival stuff. So it's going to premiere at Rain Dance in London. If you got any people in London, tell them about it. June 24th. They should definitely come and see it. We're still in consideration at TIFF, at Toronto Film Festival, and there'll be a couple, once it premieres at Rain Dance, I'll hear from a bunch of film festivals that will probably want to show it. I would think that distribution will probably take place right after the new year.
Well, I think that's just about it, Howard. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thanks, Jake. Bye.
Thanks so much for watching. And if you want to save both time and money on your VFX in post-production, make sure to subscribe right up there. And click over there to check out the next video. I've been Jake, and remember to always reframe what's possible.